Hi everyone, I'm returning back from my personal sabbatical to basically strike while the iron's hot and to create this absolutely precious beta design for Wooper, which was leaked among other earlier sprites of several Pokemon. So let's get right into it. Like with any needle felting project, the tools that you'll need are a felting mat and of course your felting needles. Now, as for the materials themselves, following the sprite that was leaked, you could very much reduce it down to 3 shades of wool, which would be mid to light blue, white and black. However, in this time lapse, I'm going to choose to take some creative liberty by making the gills a darker shade of blue, just so that the contrast isn't so harsh. Now let's get underway with the first step. To begin, we'll need to create a base form for the Wooper, which first involves creating a kind of core, either with any scrap wool you have lying around if you have an abundance of it, or even just some polyfill, but for this video I'll just be using some white wool. We'll start off by taking a long strip, and very tightly you'll want to, in succession, roll up a little bit of your wool, tuck in both ends, and tack them on with your felting needle as you go along. Make sure you're not felting too hard or focusing on one area, because at this stage we still want the core to be quite squishy and undefined, so as long as your wool is evenly tacked on and not falling apart, then you're on the right track. Now, the reason why I opted to make a log shape is to demonstrate that you can actually make this in one piece, rather than combine a separate head and body, which personally I find more difficult to get the correct proportions and to look good, if that makes sense. But moving on, because we made this form quite soft, the next step is to actually begin moulding its shape. Using a single felting needle, create an indent roughly in the middle. Keep in mind that as we continue felting, the shape will compress and change, but not to worry. At this stage we're only generally marking out the proportions, which will be refined later. It may take a while, but just keep at it, and if you have some extra felting needles on standby, this will help speed up the process, which will also be less strain on your hand. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect right now, but it is important to make sure that we're building a solid foundation, one that can keep its shape. And once we have our desired form for the head and body, we can then proceed to making adjustments and building the form with more layers of wool. Once you're happy with the general shape of the body, it's time to move on and make the legs. Instead of creating them separately, I like to make them in a similar fashion as to how I made adjustments to the body and head, which simply involves using a reference as a guide to mark out and build 4 little pointed nubs. While for the most part you can get away with creating the body in one piece, it may actually be best to create the tail separately. So for now, let's put that on the back burner and proceed to add our colours and details. Begin by taking your lighter shade of blue wool and begin wrapping it around the base. You can divide it into segments if it's easier, which is what I prefer to do. Tack it on as evenly as you can, although keep in mind that for the first layer, it's always going to turn out a bit patchy. And that's perfectly okay. It'll all come together with more layers of wool. Afterwards, move on to the face. This is by far the easiest step. All you need to do is take out some black wool, mark out the eyes and mouth, and felt the wool into place. Next up, the gills. Take out your shade of choice, again this could be black, or in my case I'm using a darker shade of blue, and create several thin logs by first rolling small strips of wool in the palm of your hands. This acts as a kind of felting itself for the heat and moisture generated by friction. And in total you want to create 8 pieces. Now, there's a few ways to approach the gills. You could make the 8 gills individually and attach them onto the head piece by piece. This is what I did for the top 4 gills. Alternatively, you could combine each side as one piece and attach it that way. Or, you can create a longer piece and divide it into 2 by creating an indent halfway. I did this for the bottom 2 pieces. Use this mark to attach it into place. When you're happy with their positions, simply secure the gills with some matching blue wool. And finally, for the last step, I'll be creating the tail using the same method as the gills. Only this time, the shape is more like a teardrop, where the tip of the tail is much wider. Once most of the tail has been felted firmly, simply grab your white wool and follow the design of the reference picture. As for the other end, keep the fibres nice and loose, so that it's easier to attach onto the main body. Again, secure it into place using the matching shade of wool. And that's pretty much all there is to it. Thanks a lot for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you do decide to tackle this project, I hope it brings a lot of fun, which is something that, honestly, we could all use. So take care everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.